So you're right across from the Kauffman Foundation.
Right.
Let's start with defining the Kauffman Foundation for those who might not know who they are and what they do, and then what role you're playing with your work.
Sure. So the Kauffman Foundation is probably the leading foundation in entrepreneurship, maybe in the world. I don't know of anybody else that does what they do. The foundation was developed by Ewing Marion Kauffman, and he actually started a business in Kansas City with not much as a pharmaceutical company, and he grew it into a very large business, and he always had this desire to help people grow. And so people that worked for him, he found ways to make sure that they could become millionaires. So they got to share in the profits of the company. And so when people exited his company, there were a lot of millionaires. And then he also created this wonderful foundation, and it has probably a $2 billion corpus behind it, and it's all about entrepreneurship and education. And so they've done an amazing job of not only seeding other people's work, but doing some of their own. So like Cameron here, he was there for a while, so he knows more about it than I do, and started 1 million cups, while he under his reign. So they create things that start and just grow right across. And so how do they play in our work? A couple of different ways. One, they do fund us, which is awesome. And but secondly, they're in Kansas City, and so they're deeply involved in the Kansas City ecosystem as well, and always looking for what gaps could be filled and how they could help fill those gaps. And then they always have an agenda, and it changes over time. Right now they're doing a lot in inclusive entrepreneurship. They've done a lot in tech entrepreneurship prior to that. Sometimes they fund across the country. Recently they've been funding more in the Midwest than across the country. So it's always interesting which is great because they don't just stay in one place. They move with the market.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I have one more question here, and then we will turn it over to our audience. What is the long-term implications you see with Google Fiber, 1 million cups, and other organizations like that?
Yeah. So Google Fiber came into Kansas City in 2011, I think, and I think every community in America competed to get to be the first that got Google Fiber. And it was interesting because the idea was to put in this really high-speed internet somewhere. And that was all we knew, right? And Kansas City, Kansas won, and they decided they would do KCK and KC-Mo. There's the two Kansas cities. And so it was an interesting time because everybody was looking at Kansas City. We were on the map, okay? And we were Kansas City. We did not used to be on the map. So we're on the map, and Google Fiber's coming in, and they are telling us nothing. That we do not have a clue as to what they're going to do. We don't know why they're putting it in. I felt bad for their PR person because she kept having to show up and go, well, I really can't tell you much. So what did Kansas City do? Kansas City did, okay, then we're going to do something, right? And so collectively, the community came together around this amazing thing and said, this is the best tech ever. Let's look at how we can create more tech companies, right? And so we had the whole community getting behind starting up the startups that use high broadband, right? High level broadband. And it was happening in the middle of a recession. So 2008, 2011, we were still hit pretty hard. And at that time, the money that was coming out from the states, the federal governments, from lots of places was around tech. We're going to bring this country back by investing in technology businesses that can create new jobs. And so the timing was amazing. It was an amazing fun time in Kansas City. Cameron was there. We were connecting entrepreneurs all the time, a lot of tech entrepreneurs, and it put Kansas City on the map. And we had this place called Startup Village, and it was just a bunch of houses where a bunch of entrepreneurs moved in, and that is where they linked in the very first cable, right? Plugged it into the house. Boom, we got Google Fiber. And, they started showing up on in the Wall Street Journal, and people started coming to Startup Village to find out what this thing was that we were doing in Kansas City. And it was just this really interesting block or two of houses that people were starting businesses in. Yeah, it was really amazing. And so what did that do? I mean, it fundamentally shifted Kansas City. I mean, because suddenly, this was another place where we were talking about entrepreneurship, and it was cool, and we were doing some cool things. And we built out a lot of good tech infrastructure. By infrastructure, I mean entrepreneurial support organizations that could help tech, have led us into our capital issues and things like that. And so that was a pretty cool thing that we had. And then 1 Million Cups, Cameron could tell the story if he had a voice, but I kind of remember him calling and saying, hey, we're just going to get some entrepreneurs to come into the Kauffman Foundation because we don't get to talk to entrepreneurs very much. And there were just a few people, and I was like out of town, couldn't go to that meeting. And I think they just had like a couple of people and an entrepreneur there. And that sort of grew into, well, let's invite a few more people. And then it turned into church on Wednesdays, right? So Wednesday morning, 9 o'clock, 1 Million Cups, Kauffman Foundation, 240 people, church. It was crazy. And, the connections and things that happened were great. And I think the idea that it's not a pitch for money, was amazing. And it just opened up these, a lot of these conversations that are going on. And then it just kept going and going and going. We kept saying, no, eventually networking events kind of die out. This will die out too. And nope, it was like Wednesday morning. Everybody went. I think what that did was bring together a community of people, that again makes a fundamental change. I do think that with the pandemic and not being able to get together, I think, entrepreneurship is kind of a contact sport. And I do think that we missed a couple years there of people just coming together and having those collisions and somebody walking out, talking to somebody else and making things happen. Just not the same over Zoom, it's not. And so I'm kind of looking forward to that coming back to where we really do have those intentional collisions other than on Zoom. I think Zoom has allowed more people to listen in, but I'm not sure that it's really allowing people to interact.